Imagine an ingredient that is in almost everything you eat, from bread to tomato sauce, from juice to yogurt, and that could silently be sabotaging your health, your energy, and even your mood. That ingredient is sugar. And the most alarming thing, most people don't even realize how much they consume per day. According to the World Health Organization, the ideal would be to ingest a maximum of 25 grams of sugar per day, which is equivalent to about 6 teaspoons. But the Brazilian average easily exceeds 70 grams per day, often without even including desserts or obvious sweets in this calculation. The problem is not just visible sugar, but hidden sugar in industrialized products. Breakfast cereals, cereal bars, ready-made sauces, soft drinks, and even light or fitness foods can carry high doses of this ingredient under other names: corn syrup, maltodextrin, fructose, dextrose, and many other disguises that fool the eyes, but not the body. When consumed in excess, sugar triggers spikes in blood glucose, followed by sudden drops. This roller coaster effect compromises emotional stability, favors the accumulation of abdominal fat, weakens the immune system, accelerates cellular aging, and contributes to diseases such as type 2 diabetes, hypertension, chronic inflammation, and even depression. Furthermore, sugar activates the same areas of the brain as addictive substances such as nicotine and alcohol, which explains that uncontrollable desire for another dessert, even when we are already full. That's why a 30-day sugar-free experiment can reveal so much more than you realize. It's not just about losing a few pounds. It's about noticing what changes in your energy, focus, mood, sleep, and even your skin. As soon as sugar is no longer part of your routine, the body goes into a state of alert. The first few days can be more challenging than you imagine. After all, the brain is used to that sweet, quick, and pleasurable reward, which triggers the release of dopamine. Cutting off this source of stimulation suddenly can generate symptoms similar to those of withdrawal from addictive substances: headaches, irritation, difficulty concentrating, excessive tiredness, and an almost uncontrollable desire to eat something sweet. This reaction is not nonsense. It is brain chemistry. In addition to the mental and emotional effects, the body also feels the physiological change. A sudden drop in blood glucose levels can cause feelings of weakness, drowsiness, and even minor tremors. It is common for productivity to drop in the first few days, for mood to fluctuate, and for sleep to be more restless. It's the body trying to find new ways to maintain energy balance without the shortcuts that sugar offers. But this initial discomfort is a good sign. It indicates that the organism is beginning to break old patterns, forcing more efficient metabolic adaptations. Instead of seeking easy energy from sugar, the body begins to use stored fat as its primary source of fuel. This process, which at first may seem like a punishment, is precisely what paves the way for the first benefits. To go through this first phase more easily, it is essential to stay well hydrated, consume foods rich in fiber, and prioritize natural sources of energy, such as fruits with a low glycemic index, whole grains, and oil seeds. The transition can be uncomfortable, but it is also deeply transformative. After the turbulence of the first few days, something interesting begins to happen. The body, now more stabilized, starts to function more efficiently and noticeably lighter. Without the sudden spikes and drops in blood sugar caused by sugar, energy levels become more constant throughout the day. Your mood improves, and that feeling of fatigue right after meals, typical of those who consume excessive simple carbohydrates, practically disappears. The swelling, which often goes unnoticed, begins to reduce. Fluid retention decreases, the abdomen deflates, and digestion becomes more regular. The intestine, freed from overloads of ultra-processed foods and insulin fluctuations, starts to function with more rhythm and balance. It is common for people at this stage to report more regular bowel movements, less gas, and a feeling of a lighter tummy. Another clear sign of adaptation is the change in taste. Foods that previously seemed bland now gain new nuances of flavor. Simple fruits, like an apple or a banana, sound really sweet. It's as if the senses are being recalibrated. This rediscovery of the natural flavor of food is a symbolic milestone. It shows that the organism begins to move from addicted mode to a state of cleaner, more authentic perception. The mood, still fluctuating for some, is now more stable. This happens because, with more balanced glucose levels, the brain suffers less interference from hormonal fluctuations caused by sugar. Irritability peaks tend to decrease, and mental clarity increases. It is still possible to have a craving for sweets, but it starts to appear less frequently and less intensely. And most importantly, it comes accompanied by awareness. The feeling of regaining control, of no longer being dominated by automatic impulses, is one of the biggest gains of this phase, and sets the stage for the even more evident transformations that come in the third week. Reaching the third week, the changes are no longer just perceived internally, and begin to manifest themselves visibly in the mirror and in daily sensations. One of the first signs noticed by those who persist on this journey is the skin. With the absence of inflammatory spikes caused by sugar, the body starts to react in a more balanced way. Excessive oiliness decreases, small pimples begin to disappear, and the overall appearance of the skin becomes more uniform, vibrant, and with fewer signs of inflammation. Another notable point is sleep. Many people report sleeping better and waking up more energetic. This happens because sugar interferes with sleep cycles, stimulating the production of cortisol at night and disrupting the release of melatonin, the rest hormone. With the removal of this unbalancing stimulus, the body adjusts and begins to enter states of deep relaxation more easily. Mental focus, which in the early days was challenged, now feels sharp. Concentration improves, productivity increases, and the mind becomes clearer, less confused. This is a direct sign that the brain is operating without the noise caused by constant glucose fluctuations. At this stage, it is also common to notice a more noticeable reduction in abdominal fat. This happens because, without the constant stimulus of insulin, which favors fat storage, the body starts to mobilize its stores more efficiently. Clothes become looser, the face appears less swollen, and self-esteem takes a natural leap. And it's not just the body that benefits. Many joint pains and mild inflammatory symptoms begin to disappear. This is the point at which the challenge stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts to feel like a relief. The desire to give up gives way to genuine curiosity. What else can improve in the next few days? At this point, the body has already assimilated a new functioning pattern. The absence of refined sugar is no longer felt as a deprivation, but as a liberation. The organism, more balanced, begins to operate with a degree of efficiency and stability that was difficult to imagine before the process began. This is where the most profound changes happen, those that, although not always visible externally, directly impact health and longevity. One of the main advances in this phase is the improvement of insulin sensitivity. With the removal of sugar, cellular receptors that were previously overloaded begin to function more precisely again. This means that the body starts to make better use of circulating glucose, reducing the risk of developing insulin resistance, prediabetes, and type 2 diabetes. It is also at this stage that laboratory tests would begin to reflect the changes. Levels of triglycerides and LDL cholesterol, known as bad, tend to fall, while HDL, good, rises. The liver, previously overloaded by glycemic spikes and the conversion of excess sugar into fat, begins to regenerate, and this positively impacts the entire metabolism. The immune system also responds better. With less silent inflammation in the body, there is less propensity for infectious diseases, allergic attacks, and autoimmune processes. It's as if the body is less distracted by the constant need to defend itself from the effects of sugar, and starts to take care of you more carefully. But perhaps the most striking sign is the change in our relationship with food. The desire for sweets decreases drastically. They may still arise sporadically, but no longer as an impulsive need. You start eating by choice, not dependence. Mental clarity is consolidated, physical lightness becomes constant, and the feeling of emotional well-being reaches a new level. It's not a diet anymore. It's a new reference for how to feel good. And what was a challenge has now become a lifestyle. After 30 days of transformation, the inevitable question arises: what now? How to maintain all this without returning to old habits? The answer is not in radicalism, but in conscious choices. Maintaining a routine with little or no refined sugar is totally possible, and simpler than it seems when you've already experienced the benefits on your skin. The first step is to pay attention to the labels. Processed foods often hide sugar under different names, and a simple look can prevent relapses. Choosing real, minimally processed foods drastically reduces exposure to invisible sugar. It is also essential to replace artificial sweets with natural sweets. Dates, ripe fruit, bananas with cinnamon, applesauce, and even a piece of 70% cocoa chocolate are smart ways to sweeten recipes without compromising your health. Natural sweeteners such as xylitol, erythritol, or stevia can be used occasionally, but without exaggeration. At social events, choose wisely. You don't need to refuse everything, but rather select carefully and remember how much you've achieved so far. An occasional slip-up does not erase 30 days of progress, as long as it does not become a return to the previous pattern. More than restricting, this process teaches you to listen to your body. When you learn to identify true hunger, the natural pleasure of taste, and the tranquility of not being dominated by impulses, sugar loses its power. And in this new scenario, well-being is not an effort, it's a consequence.